Hi, good evening. I finally felt peaceful enough to do a little talk mm, about what I spoke in my last video in Serbian last week. Mm, I was really upset, and then I had a visitor, so I couldn't do it before. But I'm feeling a little bit more at ease this today. Today, actually, tonight. I'm I was speaking about something that is carrying a lot of heavy energy, and I was in this heavy energy, and yesterday I had a session that was carrying pretty much the same kind of energy. So I had, it was quite a bit of a clearing, and I spoke about something that is still a source of my pain last week because something happened. I had a family episode again. And it's usually it involves a little bit of drama and something that I have to deal with. But I felt that I needed to speak about it because it has to be shed light on, and it has to be addressed, uh, so that it can finally start its way towards some kind of a healing and a resolution. It's not only my issue, it's not only my thing, but at least speaking about it, giving it voice is something that it's my task for now. And it's not only giving voice for this, what's mine personally, it's giving voice to um, something that it's an issue for quite a bit of people around here because it involves minority issues and something that's really socially not addressed around here properly. Uh, it involves my brother. And I already spoke about how my brother is ill, has a disease, which is, I mean, it's not actually a disease. Uh, he had a brain damage when he was at birth. He was without oxygen for a couple of minutes, so he didn't properly develop because of that. However, in given he has a cerebral palsy, that's how it's called, so it's not a genetic, it's something that comes about when the brain is without oxygen, and it cannot develop later on in life, in somebody's life. So uh, it can, it is possible to enhance, but you need to put up a lot of work in it. And usually people with it, whoever has it, are in much worse condition than he is, because he's walking and he's independent and he can do quite a bit on his own, and and he can live alone and do many things for himself, although he has help and legal guardians, but usually the people with these kind of issues, they cannot move, they cannot get out of bed, and it's because it's a muscle issue too, it's a nerve issue. And his main disabilities are in his hands and in his speech, so he cannot always speak for himself because people don't understand him. And you have to spend a bit of time with him to understand him, to develop a relationship with him, and to put a little bit of effort in it. So this is something that I've been living with my whole life, because he's been like that since he's born. And when he was born, he was not even sitting or putting or holding up his head. But they took him to Germany. He had some help, not an operation, because my family was against it. So he was doing exercises, muscle exercises that they showed him. So my parents worked with him, and on points, meridian points. They were pressed meridian points, which is really painful. And he was taking some medication, which at that time, um, getting access to that medication was really difficult, because I mean, there was we were under sanctions and there was nothing. At some point further on, it was not possible to travel, but we had some help. And oddly enough, a woman who helped us the most around that in our life. Her son, when he turned 18, had a motorbike accident, so he turned out to be disabled, uh, with a much worse condition than my brother, which is sad, but it's kind of strange coincidence, if you believe in coincidences, as if she was being prepared and taught through our connection with us for something like that. And sadly, there are quite a few men and women now. They used to be children, and but about the same age as my brother is, in my city, in my hometown, with the same kind of problem, because it was a doctor's mistake. An anesthesiologist who worked with them at that point would is responsible for this, and it was the same person, the same was present at the birth of these people. And nobody ever had any consequences because of that, because nobody have ever pressed any charges or did any research. They tried, but at that time it was impossible. Not my parents. My parents didn't try, but we were told. And we know for a fact that he was a healthy baby in mother's womb. At that time, they didn't have ultrasounds when my mother was giving birth, but we had a different other kind of means of checking. And yeah, when my mother died, I did several sessions with my brother of when I do my hypnotherapy work. And then we didn't do them for a couple of years because he didn't want to do them anymore. And then when he asked for one more, we did it again. Because lately he started having some anxiety attacks and problems. And when he has those kind of things, he cannot control himself. He's emotionally, or although intellectually, his uh, his abilities are, I mean, he doesn't have a mental retardation. So he's quite intelligent, and you can communicate with him about everything, but emotionally he's a child, and he cannot control himself properly at some issues. So he sometimes has episodes that are similar. They look like a psychotic episodes when he cannot control himself, and when he yells and shouts and screams and creates a lot of noise. A lot of aggression is coming out, but he only responds to the external stimuli, to the trigger that happens from the outside. And that trigger is usually from something that he's been told, that when he feels undermined, when he feels a lot of humiliated, unappreciated, rejected, or somehow that's something that he cannot have. And that lately usually is about emotional issues. And he's not a child anymore. He would be like a properly grown functional man, but he's not functional, although he tries a lot. And I haven't seen anybody who fights for his life and independence and living in his own house like my brother is. So far, that went fine, and that went well. But in that episode last week, we had a problem with our first door neighbor. We, I mean, with whom we had before when I was a child, with his family, not with him personally, because he was a child too. And because he's aggressive himself and he has some issues himself. So those two, I don't know, aggression, those two vibrations kind of collided, and my brother responds to vibration. So when you are being aggressive towards him in these kind of moments, it doesn't work. I mean, it doesn't help. It gets to be worse, but eventually he calms down on his own. It stops because he sends out a lot of energy like that, and a lot of energy is being taken away from him in those moments. And that's, from my point of view, that's deliberate, not from those people who are around him, because they're completely ignorant and they're completely unaware of what's driving them. And he senses something. And what I see, because when I was a subject of these attacks from him, it's he's been used as a portal at these moments. So with the therapist that I worked for myself and some of my own issues, I've been told that it's deliberate, whatever what happened to him, because of the lineage that we're coming from. And we did see that it was prearranged, sort of speaking, and it could have been avoided. And many different people said that, even, and I didn't know that. And I mean, even my parents were told this when they were trying to find out what the things were. But my brother and me, we were both victims of family violence, domestic violence, because my father was aggressive. So he kind of learned this behavior from him, but that was even worse. I mean, my father was never diagnosed or anything. He doesn't drink anymore, and it's not like that anymore, but he was, and there was a lot of very bad scenes. And my brother actually was physically, he was beaten up by my father several times. And that didn't happen to me, but I mean, we were never actually living together. So he was, when we were children, at some point, when my mother was not in our house, he was taken by my father to an institution, because there were no schools in our city that he could attend because due to his disabilities. So he had to come to the capital, to Belgrade, and to be in an institution. And he was really molested in that institution. He was abused severely, physically, by the staff, because they were neglected, and the rest of the children there, most of them, not all of them, were mentally disabled too. So they were not aware of what's going on with them. But whenever something would happen, my brother would tell my mother, and she would create a problem when she would come to see him. And then that was even worse, because he was punished then, and he was even, I don't know, he had this episode that his head was pushed in the toilet by the staff, not by people living there, because they were all children. He was like, I don't know, something like 9, maybe 10 at the time. And eventually my mother took him out of there, which I don't know how she did it, because once you're in this kind of institution, because elementary school is obligatory for us and everywhere. So he had to finish it, but he finished it in the corresponded course, because distance learning program. And it's usually, at that time, it was not so allowed. You had to have special permissions, and then it was, I don't know how she made it, but she did it. And she invested a lot of energy and time and everything of her own into my brother. So this is why he developed as much as he could. This is why he walks on his own. This is why he's independent now. And he likes being independent, and he likes doing things on his own. He even cooks as much as he can. but there is a lot of aggression sent our way, his way, but our way, because when you're belonging like as a family who are carrying differences, and first of all, we were part of a family that split up, that was dysfunctional family, that had a stigma in it, like, and a mental disease, and quite, alcoholism is also a disease in its own, and it kind of traps everybody who is in there. So my mother was also hospitalized at some point because of depression, and there was a lot of heavy energy, and a lot of misunderstanding. And at that time, domestic violence was not properly addressed as it is now. I mean, even now we're beginning to speak about it, but it's, even now, people don't talk about it, and there are a lot of victims still, especially after the lockdown and the quarantine. There were a lot of victims of domestic violence, and I had a lot of clients that are coming in with these kind of issues and the loneliness issues, and nobody's speaking about it. But even before, we were like children trapped in this situation, and only our mother was trying to help and resolve the situation, and eventually she broke down and couldn't do it anymore, because no, you didn't have any support, any systemic support, financial support, not even from your family, especially when you have a sick child, whether it is a disease like this or a other illness, physical illness. Everybody turns, the entire family around us turned their back on us because we were lower than them. We were less valuable than them. I mean, I have a cousin who lives one street next to our street, and she has never visited us ever. They do invite us to me to visit, and especially when I was working as a professor, they expected favors from me, which, I mean, I'm nice, but I would gladly tell them what I really mean. So, I mean, we don't visit each other. We were really good friends as children, but especially since our mother died, we actually lacked proper help. I mean, it was our father who was helping us then, but other than that, there were quite a lot of people who wanted to abuse this situation and not actually um, extend the helping hand. And especially to my brother, we pay for everything that anybody comes to help him there. And you are observed. I mean, I was not showing my abilities as a child at all, because we were already observed as different, because my brother was different enough physically. So his differences are visual on the outside, but mine are more on the inside. And he has a lot of abilities himself that are not developed there. I mean, even mine were not developed because I was not, I mean, nobody was paying attention to my interests and abilities, because all usually in these kind of families, all the attention goes to the one who's most needy, and you have to become very independent very early. And basically when I was 4, I stopped being a child, and I had to take care of him like I'm taking care of him now. Uh, and that entails a lot. That really entails a lot. And we endured a lot of misunderstanding within our family on its own, from our parents, especially mostly from our father, and I also from my mother, because they had expectations from me that I just couldn't fulfill, and even now I can't fulfill them because I'm not his parent. I'm his sibling, and it's expected too much from me. And whenever I would be placing boundaries with something that I couldn't do and I couldn't handle, and I thought that they had to handle because they were more mature than me, well, and that's questionable. I would be punished. I would be punished by, they wouldn't be speaking to me. They'll be angry and be aggressive verbally to me, not my mother, or they would be blackmailing me without sending me financial support when I needed it. Because if I'd come back home and lived with my brother and took on myself their responsibilities, that then I would have everything, which I didn't want to do. And I am helping my brother, but in a way that I see fit and appropriate, and he understands that we have an agreement. Um, and in this way, he actually developed a lot more than he could. My mother used to do everything instead of him and for him, so he didn't even know himself how much he can do. And then there is a lot of misunderstanding from the people around you, especially from their neighborhood, because they see you as something less valuable than they are, because you don't do things like within the social norm. And this is the problem more for my brother than for me, because he was raised not in, as if he was not sick, as if he was just like everybody else. Although he's aware of his disabilities, I mean, he is not treated as something less than. On the contrary, and usually people don't even look at look at him in his eyes when they're speaking to him, and I'm translating, or he has to repeat or write down whatever he's saying, because we don't have technological means like somebody like, I don't know, computer that would translate for him, for instance. And we're just not in a state like that, and our financial abilities are not like that. And I felt deprived, and I still feel deprived for about some things, because all the finances he's taken care of, and I was always expected to I don't know, um, find my own way to take care of myself. I was too much. Whatever I needed, it was too much for both of them. And yeah, this is why I actually didn't develop most of my talents and abilities, because they were not, I don't know, never addressed. They were just not important. And whatever I did for myself, I did it on my own, without I would not, I mean, without support. I didn't have a hindrance from my mother, but I didn't have proper support, like a wind in my back. I um I'm, I have my cat must be outside on the window. This is not my cat though, but she has to be somewhere outside, because she has yeah, she has, somebody's courting her. And somebody's flirting with her outside. Um, so this is what you're hearing, if you're hearing it. Uh, she is actually outside on the window, because she's trying to drive him off. My cat is not very friendly, no, especially not with other cats. She doesn't like company with the cats, and she's kind of cat that I sometimes I really think she thinks she's human. Anyway, but this was a sidetrack, a nice boost of mood and energy. Um, where was I? I was talking, the way that my brother was viewed when he goes somewhere, when he goes in a bus, because he has some facial expressions, because his muscles he cannot control. So he's viewed as a monster most of the time, and people show him that less now than before. But we, I mean, there were people with aggressive episodes towards him. People, children, people, women who are afraid of him and move from him, and that makes him feel bad. So the vibration, the feeling, and the vibration that comes from him is honestly really strong. Sometimes it's even hard for me to be in this kind of vibration because, from what I've seen, especially lately in my astral attacks, especially the ones that I had in spring, he is used as a portal. He's used as a mean to connect to me. And I've been told before that he's been used as a means to for, um, so that I am observed. They're watching me through him, and I started closing some of these portals, and this is why these attacks that he had happen, because they're manipulating him, and uh, there's a lot of dark entities and dark energy around around him, and through our sessions, and we usually clear them. By then he gets manipulated again, and he doesn't have emotional stability, emotional maturity, and psychological maturity to understand some of those things and defy it. Some of the people that are coming to my sessions also don't have it, although they're mentally stable. I don't see him as mentally unstable, and since we went and saw a psychiatrist lately, he's he's under observation now. Since I last made that last video, we actually received some help, and I am pleasantly surprised um, with the amount of respect and help that we received from some of my colleagues. We went to a mental institute, a research institute here. I was advised to do that because I didn't know that they're doing researches, and we didn't even know that would they accept him. And I was really pleasantly surprised with the staff, with their how they're handling manners and how they're treating patients there that come. And so far we had bad experiences wherever, and not especially in those kind of institutions. I mean, even my mother, died by doctor's mistake because they were giving her a medication she was not supposed to drink for as long as she was taking it. So she had a stroke from it. It and I was told this by an acquaintance of mine who is a doctor in a clinic in Belgrade. So this is not something that I made up. So we basically have bad experiences with doctors around here. Not only me, because it's a you know it not enough money is invested, and they're financially in a bad state. So people are not investing themselves enough, and people are overwhelmed and drained. We do have good staff, but usually you have to go privately. And whenever we went to see a doctor privately, it was a different story. But when at times when we didn't have it, this is what happened. So that's why, because this is a state institution, and that's why I was pleasantly surprised with how they treated him and the expertise that I have, because usually so far I didn't encounter this, and we as a family didn't encounter it. And I am against medications. I do not believe in a mental disease. I believe in entities and other stuff, especially when I work with on a soul plane in the quantum. When you want, if you want to say it, and especially from what I see, what I feel, what I sense, and what I know from my shamanic knowledge, training, and other abilities that I have, I see whenever this happens to him, I see a lot of entities around. And when I went to this institute, I expected to draw a whole bunch of entities on me, because this is what usually happens even when I go to see just plain general practitioner doctor. No, actually. So this is there are quite a few energetically strong people there. And I don't know if anybody has done any kind of research in these kind of areas, but if there is some kind of a positive positive beings and positive portal there, and I don't know whoever invited them there did quite a good job. And I'm really pleasantly surprised. And it was kind of, I was quite surprised when we went in there. The first thing that we saw on the wall was his spirit guide, which was kind of a, and I feel this as a positive intervention, and I'm really grateful for it. But we're in the process, so we don't know where it goes. I don't know if this helps him. I would quite, I'd be much happier if he didn't take any chemistry in him, but that's not, because that makes him susceptible for these kind of things that I'm speaking about. But he doesn't, he lacks psychological maturity and clarity for for now. Although I don't know, he speaks about energies, he reads now, and he has interests that other people don't have. And in these sessions, he has told me some things that are quite surprising. In the first ones at the beginning, we didn't receive these kind of informations, but in the last one, I was quite surprised when his soul showed up, and his soul presented himself to him. It was a male being, it was higher self, so to speaking. And of course, this is a being that has that's higher self of other people too, not only him. But I was quite surprised that he said that he looked like a wizard with a white beard, and he's sitting on somewhere on a cloud or whatever, and like a Merlin with a staff, like with a rod like mine, and he sends energy to people. And this is, so he usually sends energy to him, and this is why he's able to function the way he does. And this is in a past life. This is like an identity from a very far past life. I don't know where, because he didn't say where, but he doesn't know of these of my own memories of these, and he doesn't read books like this, and he doesn't watch movies like this, so he didn't make this up. So he said that in some of his past life, I mean, he was mentioning some others that were not so good, and like, so being a soldier, being this and that, who was like he has a karma, so he has to suffer, and he has to learn to be disabled to gain a reward in heaven and advance a little bit more, which didn't sound genuine to me at that moment. And the latest, I felt something on him that I tried to remove, but I couldn't remove it myself, and it almost attached to me. And when we went to see the doctor now, he told her that he hears voices, and this is what I recognized, but he didn't tell me this before, because this whatever was telling him not to tell me something, to shut up, that I'm not right, this is not a guide. This is not what guides tell you. And by the way, I had a session yesterday with a similar topic of how to recognize when entities are making a mock with you, and or are lying to you and trying to get you to do what they want, and how does it feel and sound when your guide is there. So he usually doesn't call on his guide and his white light, like big white angel as he calls him. He forgets that at that moment, but he's very open. And there's like a whole party then at that moment, and especially when other people around him also have them, then it's a whole mess. And so what is happening is because the person who is astrally following me and creating problems for me is banned of accessing me anymore. Not by me, yes, but not only by me, but by my original group and some higher beings that, I mean, they're guardians. And he's trying to find a way wherever he can, where I am vulnerable, so that we open the doors ourselves. And yeah, that's what's happening because of Jack. And when I had an astral attack this spring, uh, because biggest disabilities of my brother in his left hand, he couldn't control his left hand when he was sick, and he would be moving it, and then at some point it would stop, and there was some energy that would be sent directly to me. And I know that it's not him who is doing it, but the abilities that are being used at this moment are his, because we are from the same lineage, partially, and he has abilities similar to mine, uh, and it's coming from our mother's side, and it's the problem. It's there. It's in that branch, and we took it back, and after that, and somebody is pissed off because of it. So yeah, they're creating problems. That's what I'm, as a quantum therapist, as a shamanic practitioner, which I'm basically not, but I also am, and with my own abilities and knowledge that I have, and what other therapists that I work with told me. And yes, that's what's been going on. But he doesn't want to work with natural remedies. He doesn't believe in it because this is part of his programming. And he wants to cooperate with doctors, with therapists, and he even asked a friend of mine who is a psychologist to have a to talk to her, which is the first. I never seen him does something like this, but he did. So he accepts help. He wants help. But this is where we got, how far we got so far. And from what I'm seeing, this is a lot more than other people are doing for themselves in the situations like this. So he has some support, but this wizard that he was, we were working together. We were also siblings, something like that, and we had a group, and we worked together in this group, and we're protecting, guarding people, some people, from something with the abilities in our hands. And to both of us, our hands were cut at that time. So I'm just assuming that this is like the life that I saw, that I had in Avalon. But since then, he had pretty bad lives and got pushed in this reality where he's in a deep oblivion. But he's quite, from what I've been seeing, and from the being that appeared as his soul, is quite powerful being, and is a being who is a guide and a guardian for others and teaches others. And I don't know why I was surprised at that moment, because to have a life like this, and to carry out a mission that you have in this life, and to carry out lessons, you have to have a lot of energy. You have to be quite powerful being, so that you can maintain, so that you can survive, so that you can develop. And this fraction that is interested in us, that is following me around, but obviously him too, doesn't want you to develop. So he got it pretty worse than I did, but my abilities are not as near as developed as they could be. Because quite possibly I would blast them into oblivion if I could access completely whatever I had. I mean, I had a client yesterday like that who didn't believe in her own abilities, but it turned out that she projects beams, like laser beams, blue beams, from her eyes, and she cuts cords that negative entities, negative aliens, negative entities, and create. And that can fries them. So they tend to imprison beings like this. like progenitors, creator beings, and keep them in deep oblivion so that they never ask for their gifts and talents and never retrieve them. And when once you do, they will just not hand them out to you nicely and work on pretty please. They do not function on pretty please. They do not stand love in the amount of love that you are able to project, but this is why exactly why they keep you in lower vibration. Because as a progenitor, as a creator being, this is precisely what you enhance, like 3 to 4 times, and they can exist there. So this is, I mean, like I said, there's quite a bit of amount of a heavy energy, not only around people like my brother is, and even worse. And in a way, I can understand why most of people don't want to be in this kind of. I don't want to be in this kind of energy, but I'm living in it, and this is one of my biggest abilities is like I'm a master cleaner. I can clean the darkest of the dark. This is my biggest ability, and this is where it's been developing in my life and in past lives. But I was having some emotional reactions myself, usually when this thing, because I was really, this is a source of my pain. I had, like, this week, big amount of heaviness was being cleared from my heart. That will probably create a disease for me, because I was feeling it was there, and I had an implant there too. And I was also feeling a lot of shame around this, because I mean, my family that, doesn't want to have much to do with us. They just do it as much as, as much as they feel proper, so that they don't feel guilty about it. Because they're ashamed. They're ashamed of us. They're ashamed of my brother, and he feels it. He feels that I was ashamed, because nobody ever wanted to be friends with me either because of that. And I didn't have, I wasn't dating at all because of that, because they didn't want, nobody wants this in your family. They judge you. And even people from spiritual community judge me. They still judge me. And there are people who will not come for my session, and people who will judge me because I'm speaking openly about this. And this is the first time actually in my life that I'm speaking openly about this because of that. Because people tell you that there must be something wrong with you, since you're experiencing all of this. Oh, it's karma. It has to be your karma. Well, you know what turned out? It has to be my abilities. Because when you're not using your abilities, somebody else is. And create your reality. Yeah, you create them, and you're sort of pushed in a loop of karma, which karma is a lesson. So you're kind of experiencing mm, consequences of your own choices. But you can make choices based on wrong assumptions, and those wrong assumptions doesn't always have to come from you. So what I've been seeing lately, from not lately but throughout all of my sessions, and especially lately with my clients, and especially if you tend to believe the thoughts that you have in your mind a lot. Some of these thoughts might not even be yours. It might be telepathic. So they might be from other people around you, but they might be from the beings that are discarnate and are not so good. Whether because they just want to live off on your energy and exist here and not go into the light, or because they're generally not good. And usually when you have beings of the light, and your guides, your genuine guides, they do interfere, and they have interventions, but those interventions are based on your choices. So if you refuse to participate with them, if you refuse to let them in your reality, if you do not ever ask them for the assistance, if you forget to ask them for the assistance, there is only some amount of intervention and things that they can do because they respect our free will. And this is, in a way, limiting them, because if they cross that, they will have consequences themselves, because it's a law, it's a divine law. And there are beings who are, yeah, they're respecting your free will, but they're uh, creating um, circumstances for you so that you make certain choices. So in a way, you're choosing it for yourself, you're allowing them for yourself to be there, and it's not their fault. So they're allowed to do that in eternity, until you learn that lesson, until you learn how that functions, until you learn how that works, and ask and tell them, no, get the fuck out of my energy. These are my boundaries. And they won't like it. They will try to pierce you again. They will try to create a mutiny and do everything to attach back, because it's food. For them, that's food. But then you have to be wise enough to keep saying no, 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 to recognize it and keep saying no, and invite your guidance until you are finally able to live in a dimension of love. Because it's love where they cannot exist. It's love that they don't know, and sadly enough, it's love that most of the people who have been abused and being living in a dysfunctional families and living like that is something that they do not know. My brother has received a large amount of love from our mother, so this is why he was able to develop as much as he did. But most of those children are sometimes abandoned. I mean, there was my reaction last week was also on an article. They we There was a research around here from some foreign institutions who were researching, especially institutions like that, who are taking care of these kind of children with disabilities and special needs, but are also abandoned and are living in institutions. And they were shocked with the findings, because those children are basically left to die, and they're not helped enough. We do not have staff that is trained enough properly, and especially that are able to withstand that much heavy energy. I mean, they're not talking about energy, of course, but this is what I'm saying, because this is what I've seen. I have worked in a foster home with physically healthy children, not as an external, somebody who was coming and going as an external consultant, but I was working with children, and a group of children that were chosen for that. So I had the best of them, but the conditions that they were living in were not good, and not conditions that anybody should be living in. But the sad truth was that they couldn't live with their parents because of various reasons, so they had to live like that. But like a couple of years ago, we had this law that would place these children in foster homes, and that's quite another story. I'm not going to go there now. So in these institutions that they used to live are children with disabilities, and the staff that is working with them are just not properly equipped to do that. I'm not saying that things like that happened to my brother are still happening. I don't know that, because I don't have any contact with them. But this is what happened to my brother, and it was like, I don't know, some 30 years ago. And staff is aggressive towards them. If you don't want to cooperate, you are being roped to your bed and given medications to calm you. Like, I mean, he's taking medications now, but there's different kinds of them. But usually, when you go to the psychiatrist here, you're just giving sedatives. So, nobody who has a mental illness around here, regardless of whether he has other kind of disabilities, is treated properly, is seen properly, especially families who are having somebody with a mental disease and a mental problem uh, is also stigmatized and is not seen properly. They're viewed. Most of the times they don't even want to work on themselves because of that. And they saying we're not sick. And we have a lot of people with PTSD from war zones and from people who went to war, who after 20 years or something, we even had these kind of episodes that they would just out of the blue kill somebody, a family member usually, because this is how PTSD functions. When you do not address your traumas and feelings, they don't always come out as a physical disease. They do come out as a physical disease, but if you're neglecting even that, you have breakdown. And when you have a breakdown, you usually either go to institutions, and mostly around here, people do not go to institutions because they don't have the capacity for it. We do not have good institutions. They cannot live there. It's not a place for somebody to live. We do not even have a private institutions like that at the moment. I hope, I wouldn't mind if my brother would be placed somewhere where he feels okay, where he's taken care of, where he has company, where he's feeling good, when he's you know given proper attention. But even people who have physical illness and have to be institutionalized, not in a hospital, but in some kind of an institution like this, sometimes do not have proper care, because we do not have enough staff, we do not have enough capacity, we do not have enough substances, and they're not trained properly. They're financially not taken care of. It's many different issues, and there are also less institutions than the people who need them. So that's another issue. So you're basically left on your own. You have to do everything on your own. And usually, who takes care of these kind of things in my family? So sometimes that's overwhelming. And sometimes I felt ashamed because of this condition of my brother, because people were stigmatizing me and rejecting me, especially when children can be pretty cruel. And they were cruel to me. They were cruel to my brother, especially in our neighborhood. They're still not very much consciously developed people and aware people, but some are not so heartless like others. But this particular neighbor that we had a problem with, he threatened me and my brother, because my brother was creating this episode, and because I didn't like what he told me, and already something happened that he took a portion of our land and in yard, and I showed him that I didn't like that, and I invited a lawyer, and he didn't like that, so he didn't say anything. We kind of resolved that peacefully. But now it turned out that he didn't like it because of the things that he told me. He basically threatened me. He said that my brother and me will not have any peace from him, and he will invite some friends of his own now to see what he can do about my brother. And what I think that they're cattle, because they have to live like that and put up with my brother, because I told them that my brother has as much right to live in his own house like he does. And that's quite another issue, and this is why I think that somebody had some other agenda behind that. And nobody who's well-meaning is threatening something like that and would create problems for you, because it's pretty obvious that he already has problems. He doesn't need any more problems, and he's been living there all his life. So by now you already know that he can sometimes have these kind of episodes, but they were never shown outside of our family, so they were never faced with them, and they never were directed towards them, so they didn't care. They don't give a fuck. But now, um, because of themselves, they still don't give a fuck about my brother. It's about themselves. And especially when they're presenting this to you as they're taking care of you, they want to do something for you. This is for your own good. Like all this agenda that we keep hearing around. I I would personally create a whole lot of fuss. But my brother has to live there, and he's just scared. He doesn't feel his own house anymore as a safe space, and this was the only safe space he had, and that kind of breaks my heart and makes me feel sad. Because if you cannot feel safe in your own house, where can you feel safe? Because of these astral attacks and being constantly observed, honestly, I do not feel safe in my own house and in my own space. But I'm conscious of it, and I'm trying to do something about it, but he doesn't know. And I have filed many complaints with the higher courts, and there is a higher court, and it's very important to understand about these voices and the difference between the voices of your guides and the voices of the other entities because of these courts. Because it's accessible to any of us. It doesn't have, you don't have to be in a session with somebody to file a complaint to the divine courts, to the higher courts. I'm not talking about a karmic council. I'm talking about something else. But you need to have a representative in that court, divine council, because there are voices that are speaking against you all the time there, and raising, like in a court, they're raising a case against you according to everything wrong that you have ever done, according to your choices in the past, in this past life, whatever, your thoughts, whatever. And if you don't address your guides and somebody who is going to represent you there, you don't have a representative there, so you don't have a case. It doesn't mean that God doesn't intervene, but you have to ask him too to intervene, and most of us don't ask him. We forget to ask him in these moments, and most of us don't even believe that anything is happening. You know, even my client yesterday told me, I believe that you see things and I believe that you hear things, but I don't believe that I can. And everything that she has been telling me and all these abilities that she has, it's her own insight, it's her own connection to her guide. It's I was just asking her questions according to what she would tell me. And this is the problem. This is why they keep us stuck in such low vibrations that we can keep our heads up. And even if we had bad choices in the past, it doesn't mean that we have to uh, keep, take these consequences perpetually in eternity. Because you can repent, when you learn your lesson, you can move on. You don't have to be stuck forever in that loop of learning the same lesson over and over and over again. And this is what they're doing. And for some people like that cannot interfere and intervene and ask for themselves, and they don't develop enough of consciousness if they're like mentally challenged. Of course, I mean, they also have guides. We all have guides, and they have guardians who are taking care of them. They're learning their lessons. This is their lesson, and according to that, they will make another choice. But they're usually, the thing is that their energy, their life force is being extracted. This is why they have a lot more things attached to them than most of us. And their families, and they're dragged into this, and I feel it. I feel it. I feel it. I mean, I feel it when you come, whenever somebody from my clients come for a session with something like that on them, I feel it. They are trying to poke me and pierce me, and and I throw up. I Yesterday I didn't, but yesterday there was like a whole bunch of them around here. But I mean, after some sessions and even before some sessions, I throw up quite a lot because this is how I clear it, because I somehow my energy is removing it, clearing it through myself, which I don't like, and I'm learning not to do that, not to work, function like that, because it's not doing me good. So this is how I know that what's happening with him too, but that's me, and I cannot interfere. There's just as much as I can do, suggest, do, but I cannot do things instead of him, make choices instead of him. And especially in a situation like this, you cannot live instead of somebody. I cannot have my own life and lead my brother's life. And I am not born here only to take care of him. I have my own lessons and my life too. And this is a part of it, of course. But this was a big problem for me too. This is why I was feeling a lot of sense of guilt, had a lot of guilt, and I had a lot of shame around it, because I felt a lot of pressure from my parents to do something that I just couldn't do, that I had no capacity to do. And he has a lot of pressure from people who, or even our father, who doesn't understand that at these moments he's not doing anything on purpose. He just can't control it. He cannot do it. He's not doing it anything to shame somebody. He's not doing anything to make somebody feel worse. He just doesn't know any better. He's sick. And not only him, but other people too in these situations. They just think if they just push them enough and they explain enough, and if they are even aggressive, they threaten them enough, that they will stop. And they won't. And even in those moments, he can say, yeah, nobody understands me, nobody understands me. They don't. That's the truth. Because they are not educated enough themselves. They're not aware themselves. And this is something that I'm usually dealing with. And it's not easy for me in surroundings like this. I would like different surroundings. And even if my brother was in a different surrounding, he would probably flourish somewhere where he will be a bit more supportive with people who understand his disabilities and can help him develop in a proper way as far as he can. But these are the circumstances in our country. And this is why I'm speaking about it, because it needs to be addressed. And yeah, as a society, we need to take care of this. We need to do something, because everybody comes here because of this whole evolution. Everybody comes here for a reason. Nobody comes here by mistake. And they are allowed to have a life, and their families are allowed to have life and independence, and their siblings are allowed to have life and independence, and develop their own lives and have their own choices and have their own interests. There are different stories too. Everybody, you know, everybody knows the story about Nick Vujicic, and there is the story of Helen Keller. This is not a very tolerant society. They lived in a completely different society. There are quite a few countries like this, and there are even worse countries than this. There were even worse situations than this, because they used to kill children like this. And this is how they teach us something. This is how they teach us tolerance. This is how they teach us differences. And this is what we need to accept and show compassion for. And I was surprised on that day when actually somebody listened to my brother, and he was addressed. and looked in the eye, and he had so much energy, and I have never seen him like that. I've never seen him with so much energy and willingness to do things. And honestly, I mean, he feels trapped in his own body, and I feel trapped in this situation. This is the truth. But it's not like we're not developing, it's not like we're not doing things that we are supposed to do. It's just that I'm fed up with the ignorance, tired, yes, but mostly fed up, and I would like to address it a bit more aggressively and to say things how I mean them openly. And I would curse a lot in this case, but I'm being nice. And I would like to address this people following us around and this being person wanting these abilities. He cannot have them. The agreement is already made that they're being transferred to me. It's already happening. So whatever the agenda is there, no way. There are higher powers and higher authorities that have to be asked and addressed for this, which many of you omitted to understand. And this is why we had an intervention. But I'm fed up of the amount of the aggression that I'm experiencing. I'm fed up of the amount of the aggression that is sent his way. And at least I can defend myself. And I'm really fed up of being straight away from my own path so that I don't do other things and I have to deal with that, to deal with this kind of situation, this drama, this, that. There will, I mean, I could walk away. I could easily just walk away, but this is not how things should be dealt with from the compassionate heart. And I am going to help. But there will just be a point that I won't be allowed to be dragged into a pit hole. So I'm just stating that and I'm addressing that. And I'm just placing boundaries. No means no. There are people that don't understand no. It doesn't matter how many times you tell them. And I've been having this kind of situations. I'm speaking about men mostly now. And yeah, there is something I need to address about that too. And this is coming up. And this is the next thing that I'm going to be addressing. Because this is how I'm placing boundaries on the higher planes too. Because everything is being created first there. And I'm being very manipulated in my dreams lately. And this is why I'm doing this. Because I am clearly addressing my own soft spots, my own vulnerability. And I know that there are many people around here who can, women especially, who can identify with me as a sibling. But there are many women there who can identify with my brother too, yeah, but my mother too. I cannot work with people like him because they do not qualify for it. I should not work with people who have mental disease. But I worked with him because I can understand him. I can understand his speech. But the problem with these kind of people is that mostly they either cannot talk and people don't understand them. So this is why you cannot do something like this with them. But we can work with a family or a family member or a guardian as a surrogate, so you can connect to the higher self of this person and receive information. Healing guidance, yes, but mostly information. And I'm not mean, I'm not a Christ. This is why it's sad, because I felt judged by the spiritual community. Some people from the spiritual community, but they didn't. Some people didn't want to work with him. Some astrologers, some people who were doing, who would work with hands. When he received Reiki healing, he never had these kind of episodes, but he doesn't want to do it anymore. And some people who used to do it for him before don't want to do it again because it's too much heavy energy for them. That's what they said. And I honestly, I do not understand you. What the fuck do you think you're going to be dealing with here? I mean, healthy people don't need doctors, and they don't usually go to see doctors. The ones who are sick are coming to see doctors. So who do you think you're going to be dealing with? So I really don't understand this. People like him, and even worse conditions for him, could benefit a lot from energy techniques. But most of the time, either the families don't ask for it or people don't want to work with him. There were people who wanted to work with him and helped him a lot. He benefited a lot from some shamanic work, for instance. And he actually needs a very good shaman, and he needs somebody who can perform exorcism, from what I've seen, because I cannot. I need his cooperation and understanding, and I would need him to stop cooperating with his voices that he's hearing. So I cannot help him with what I do, but somebody else who is performing this kind of thing work would. But at the moment, I don't know anybody who could do something like that. But I'm saying this for other people too in a similar situation. And I've had clients, women who would call me who had sick children with physical disease, and what usually goes around is not only when stigma from community, but from families, especially families of the fathers, and they will usually blame the mother. It's a mother's fault because a child is sick. It's usually the mother's fault. And this is what some clients told me, and mostly because they heard it from somebody. Mostly they hear it from their mother-in-laws, but they sometimes hear it from their own mothers too and fathers. And it's not true. It's not the mother's fault. It's a choice. It's a soul choice. Whether the soul is the being is being manipulated, or the part of the personality that is choosing is being manipulated, or having wrong choices, or making a choice from a wrong belief, that's another story. But this is being prearranged before somebody incarnates. As far as I've seen so far from my clients who had, from his own session, but from other clients, I didn't have any other clients like him. Like I said, I cannot work with them, but yeah, if there are parents, guardians, caretakers of somebody like this, we can work as a surrogate if you are willing to be a surrogate. But I'm inviting here, and I invited in a Serbian video, I want to give a free session to a mother of a sick child. If there is a mother who needs it, it will be free of charge. I had one woman that I spoke about that like a couple of months ago before we all got sick, but she didn't call me back after that. So yeah, I would like to give a session as a gift to somebody who has a sick child, whether that will be for a child and you're a surrogate for that, or for yourself. It doesn't really matter. It's just the thing that we have to see is whether you're ready for a session like this or not. But I'm willing, and the invitation is open whenever somebody's ready. So yeah, I think this is what I needed to say for now, and I'm ready to be really peaceful, and I'm ready to My brother had an episode yesterday when I was only writing about a session about voices and entities. So I waited so that I know that he went to sleep and he can, be pulled around again. So this is not easy. It's not easy. Not easy. Soul choice, not easy. Lessons, not easy. That you need to understand. And especially it's not easy when you start remembering and coming out of it and placing boundaries. So you have to remove a whole lot of things around you that are not you. Even that you created with your own choices, but still they're not you. And many people, circumstances, beings around you will not like it. Because for some of them, it doesn't only mean losing some energy and losing some abilities. For some of them, it means cease existing. Honestly, I don't give a fuck. Excuse my language, but I'm so freaking tired of this. I don't know how to call this. Person being that is expressing such inability to learn his own lessons. That the way I feel it at the moment is it's either me or him. So I don't give a fuck. Because with everything that he's been doing lately, it's aimed to my elimination. So I'm tired of being really careful with everything that I say, everything that I do, everything that I, with whomever I talk, I have to be really careful of what I'm accepting or not. So I'm really tired. I'm really tired. And I'm tired of all this aggression sent my way. I don't freaking accept this. And I would really like for it to be sent away straight to its original sender or whatever. Because I don't want it. I don't want this in my reality, and I want to be in the dimension of love. And I want this for everybody else. I want to create this reality. And this is the reason why I'm speaking about my own vulnerabilities. And as a protection means, as a boundary means, as a clearing, as I speak, I clear. And as a healing means, but also as a creation tool, because this is what I want to create for everybody. This is the kind of world that I want to live in, that I want to see, that nobody else has to experience all of this ever before. We were both victims of satanic ritual abuse, and my brother got it worse. And I didn't know this. I worked with a whole bunch of people who went through something like this before I started seeing and information, because it was clearing through me somehow, because he cannot do it himself. So it was being cleared through me. It was horrible. It's horrible. And however he's feeling now, whatever he's experiencing now, it's horrible. I don't want anybody else to have to experience this. I do not want this kind of reality. I want reality of love. And this is why I'm sharing this, in case somebody is, having this, trying to judge, having judgmental thoughts. And yeah, that's why I never spoke about it before, not only because we were being judged, but because I felt very attacked afterwards. And a great amount of aggression was coming our way after that too. And I was afraid that somebody would get hurt. I would get hurt, usually, but I was afraid somebody else would be hurt. I don't want to give in to that anymore. I don't care what happens. I don't want this kind of reality anymore. So when it undermined me, because I was living in reality where there was no love, because I was experiencing domestic violence and I was abused as a child, and you wanna call me, you want to humiliate me by telling me that I never experienced love. Fine, go ahead. I do not accept it, but watch me undo and uncreate everything I created for you and for your convenience. I ain't doing it anymore. That's all. And I invite love in for everybody, including this freaking being and including this freaking neighbor of mine, because they haven't been living in love themselves either. And they don't know what that is. So that they feel like they have to guard with aggression and whatever they have with being violent, whatever they think that they gain from it. But that's not love. And at this point, I don't care about anything else much, but being in the dimension of love. And I guess that's real ascension, not what we were talking about and calling ascension, which is another story. But I've extended this speech a long time. There will be no transmission tonight, light language transmission, although I am in a better vibration for it, but still, I think this is enough. My own emanation for this one is enough. Thank you for your trust, for your patience, for your attention, and thank you for believing in me when sometimes I didn't. And basically, thank you for placing your trust in me. I will create shortly a little live that will be announced. I don't know whether it's going to be on Zoom or YouTube. I will see. And I don't know whether that's going to be in English or in Serbian. It's going to depend on participants. But I'm open either way. And it's going to be open conversation and open talk with questions that I'll be answering if you have any questions, because I am in a process of creating something that will be a spiritual counseling or something like that, like a platform for that. And I would like to hear your thoughts, inputs, questions, anything that you have to say or ask me. I'm not gonna have a topic. It's gonna be like open. And I'm just announcing it now. Thank you again for your patience. Sending you blessings.